Hello, back at Bethesda. Because if we walk the suburbs on one side, we may as well cover the other side. Plus, my phone didn't charge overnight, so this will be shorter. Anyways, but oh man, 5:45 on Saturday, Sunday, and then 6 o'clock on weekdays does take its toll past a certain point. But oh gosh, so about that Taylor Swift contract, I am kinda cooked on one of them. So there were two markets for Taylor Swift, only two markets for two of her songs on how many Spotify streams. One was the lead track, Ophelia, and then the other one was the one with Sabrina Carpenter. And my general take is, and so Spotify, there's a 1 day lag before it populates. Before it populates. Before it populates a song, it streams. And so yesterday, so far yesterday morning, I talked about, how I put a slightly irresponsible amount of money on certain Taylor Swift markets. And, those two songs. And unfortunately, I put more money on the Sabrina Carpenter one, in part because the pricing seemed more attractive. In part, naturally because, people do realize it's not the lead song. So there's some risk embedded from that. And so Ophelia had 34 million Spotify streams in 1 day. And if the goal is to get to 100 million in 6 days, 6 times 30, 180, very good. Big boom. So that one's fine. I think I had probably $30 in various tranches for that one. Of course, not many in the 100 million tranche range. But the issue is for the Sabrina Carpenter one, it was only 18 million, which is not good, especially when you consider, right, just how big of a day one boost there is, right? Because that's when there's the most attention naturally. So the decay curve is probably going to be relatively. We have to consider it. Now, one thing people do talk about when they come to Spotify markets, is it going to be a radio type of song, which helps its appeal, which helps get it more traction overall. And that's a good point. And that certainly gets into the gambling aspect of the Spotify markets, where you, you don't know what the song sounds like. There's been a couple of songs where I listened to it after the fact to put money on it. Like, well, crap. It sounds not like a mass market pop hit. So, I suppose I need to add Taylor Swift to the list of things that I've sized inappropriately. Because in Spotify markets, that's Ed Sheeran and Lorde. Otherwise, then she also joins Kamala, among others, But what can you do? Well, and the real shame is I did recapitalize my account. I did transfer. For some reason, I can't use my checking account. It's my main checking account to deposit. So I have to go through the workaround of going to Capital One, use my Capital One account, right? But of course, your Capital One account, being the savvy bank that they are, right, has zero interest, and so, so it shows that there's friction, and conceptually, like, you want to avoid friction for your users. But clearly, I care so much about prediction markets that I would tolerate such friction to indulge my habits. So we'll see. Gosh, but 18 times 6. Yeah, we're not gonna hit 100, are we? Now, if we can get to 85, at least I'll recover my principal for the most part, right? Because naturally, like, you do tranche it out in layers somewhat, right? So your more risk on layers, right, should be sized smaller than your AAA is your AAA. This song will get more than 80 million streams, which it should, right? Because that implies a run rate of 4 days, or 4.5 days, which we're kind of at, but only kind of. So that is not great at all. And issue, of course, for some reason the market I expected there to be more liquidity on it, because the Sabrina Carpenter one, there was a lot. I just suppose the Ed Sheeran one there wasn't. It was a bit bizarre because it's not like there's an infinite number of Taylor Swift markets. So, yeah, but super annoying because, like, all the bid asks are horrible, and, like, there's no liquidity on either side, which does tell me that I'm the sucker for having bought into it, I suppose, is the right takeaway. But on a side note, prediction markets are great because it is a way to monetize, right, some interests, which I think is just cool, right? Because conceptually, most people, they probably have an area of specialty that is fairly niche, and that probably doesn't have any actual real-world application until now, namely prediction markets. So there's a charming live stream, or a Twitter article, because Twitter has articles now, as Elon does, which is actually, a decent prime market fit, especially if you're going to deprioritize Substacks. But in the article, the guy, he found a Taylor Swift lyric leak, and he basically used that to back into lyrics for the prediction market on what words will be in the album. And he actually, say what you will about the efficacy of trying to back into lyrics, but he did make money. He did make more than my entire P&L, my net P&L. So, but it does get like a broader question of how much insidery trading stuff is there in these markets. It's like, well, if you have a leak that is publicly accessible, so it's not really bad per se, but yeah, it's just fun to, like, how hard it is to have something that truly goes unleaked, right? Like, you think about soccer transfers, right? Before Fabrizio and company, you could actually be surprised. The same thing goes with so many other things these days. It is hard to be surprised. Now, I suppose if you just have your head under a wall, your head in the ground, you can. But generally, if you're plugged in enough, you can find a leak. Look at that. Purple line's not built or finished yet, but the graffiti gang got to it. Very nice. Yeah, so those are interesting. Anyways, the other thing, again, I made a joke, but I'm 90% sure there's some dorks at the National Weather Service who are insider trading. Well, I suppose it's not insider trading, but they literally have access to the data feeds, right? Because the weather markets, right? And this is incredibly degenerate, but it's pretty much what will be the high temperature in Los Angeles today, on this day, like today. So it's only a daily market. It'll be, and the tranches are basically like 1 to 2 degrees. Like each tranche is like 78 to 79, 80, 81, right? So it is precise. So so there is specificity. And naturally, right, only one market will pay out, right? Because the high will fall into one of those tranches. And so the outcome, it's not from just looking up on Google the weather, right? It comes from the National Weather Service. And it turns out the National Weather Service, like where they take the readings from, varies within a city. So it's not universally. And so pretty much the location where the National Weather Service takes the reading from can be in a part of the city. Maybe it's closer to the coast or to the ocean, which will affect things, right? Maybe it's, So with that, there's actually nuance. I don't think a beginner would appreciate on these markets. You can certainly see the appeal to a beginner of this market, right? Because it's high velocity. So you'll get, right, certainly a lot of the appeal of sports betting is that you get the feedback instantly. And these markets, right, they're daily. So you've got that element. That's probably it. I did everything, right? Like you see weather, he's like, okay, I can just Google the weather. Or I can look at what is the average high in the city. Like, okay, you can do some data work to try to substantiate your point. What you can do. So you've got that. But yes, pretty much the joke is, because naturally, like some people are very profitable on this market, right? Because you can see the P&L of who the top people are in this type of thing. It's like, well, I bet if you work for the National Weather Service, A, you're probably not paid that well. B, you have access to these data sets. And then C, I don't think your compliance policy is so forward-looking to cover prediction markets. And it's so innocuous as to, there's not really an ethical conflict, Like there's certainly other prediction markets where you could feel that. Oh shit. Anti-pedestrian sprinkler. There's certainly other prediction markets where you could feel that. There's some quandary, like I think about Dan Friedman and Daniel Gross joining Meta. It's like, well, if there was significant extreme buying, there's probably some insider. I mean, that one I didn't touch it. Well, it came out on a Sunday night, so I bought on a Sunday, but afterwards I didn't touch it because at that point I could have had some, in the grand scheme of things, right? I do suppose, given all the corporate sexual misconduct scandals, it is like, do you value a $10 million pay package? Or is that female subordinate? $10 million pay package versus female subordinate. Well, I just suppose that just says that the marginal benefit or enjoyment of a female subordinate is materially higher than it is for the 10 millionth dollar. There's a lesson in there somewhere. But no, you don't really hear about the opposite way, right? Like, I do think there's one story about such. I can't remember it. I think it was at a bank. But otherwise, you don't hear about the opposite way of sexual or workplace relationship misconduct. Interesting why that is. Not sure if that because top female execs tend to be married. I could imagine that most male execs are, or certainly the subset that engages in such content, would be single. It is charming to think of whether someone's single or not as being a potentially material thing to keep an eye on. Which, you know, is unironically the case to some degree. It's probably some form of workplace discrimination at some point, if you choose to interpret it as such. Now, the issue is my phone did not charge overnight because I have to unplug my phone charger, my USB-C, in order to charge my earbuds. And so now I'm in a predicament, but I didn't leave my earbuds charging long enough. So I'm in a predicament where my phone has not charged, so my phone is very low. And my earbuds are very low. And I kind of need my phone to be able to use the subway. I suppose I could tap and pay, but out of principle, if I pay X for the subway, I kind of want to just free ride, amortize my subway monthly pass, which I think I do a very good job at, but alas. So the short of it, today will be a shorter episode. Yeah, because my phone battery is not gonna last. Yeah, plus you know, some self-loathing, so I need to lock in to get some work done. Yeah, again, I made a joke, right? Like, it's very, very easy to make oneself very disappointed in his existence, namely thinking about not sizing certain securities in larger size and not having more gumption or risk tolerance to ask out girl X, Y, or Z. Again, yeah, you know, it's all internal monologue until now. At the end of the day, you know, I suppose the key thing is, you know, I think some cartoon made a joke where, you know, if you're busy, you can't really think about those things. But you're not really busy when you're walking, because it's not like you can access your spreadsheet while walking. So namely, you know, when you're walking, you can think about those things and feel a bit disappointed. But you're walking. And walking, right, helps you feel better for whatever biochemistry reasons. And plus you're walking, right? Like how many steps does the average Yank get? Probably not a crazy amount, you know? So therefore, that's how you can rationalize it. So pretty much, it is loser behavior, whinging or just stewing about app loving at $11, or that girl at that one semi party. But again, you're walking, so you gotta think about something. Yeah. Yeah, I am truly raw dogging this walk, right? Because of course Chevy Chase does not have a grid system, so it is actually semi confusing. Oh, booty old raw dog. I can't imagine raw dogging a flight. It does just seem like a horrible use of time. If anything, in the modern day, a flight is effectively, certainly if you're a PMC, professional managerial class member, a flight is the only time you technically, like conceptually, you get to disconnect. So raw dogging a flight seems like a horrible use of time. If you want to go into a vegetative state, you can do that, plenty of the time. I should disclaim, I do say or other semi-ironic phrases a lot in these videos, although it's more so me just trying to fill the void. Okay, so we got a rabbit today, no deer. So we know that this part of Chevy Chase is fancier because a rabbit is probably the more sophisticated animal compared to a deer, one could argue. There is classism in everything. Huh. I suppose that is one thing I haven't really ranted about at any point in this, just the implicit classism that exists. Yeah, I don't really have a lot to say about it, because that would probably just turn into like, well, just don't think about it, Or it's almost like you can't really speak on something that you don't really think about. It's like, yeah. Generally, like, I would just be regurgitating like vague epithets I read online or from coworkers or whatever, or friends. And even like most of my friends in college were at similar backgrounds, where we're real plugged in to that aspect. Which again shows how I certainly didn't maximize the college experience, but you live and learn, right? Live and learn. Well, I suppose in this case, you don't really get a second chance, do you? You don't really get a second chance, do you? There's a Taylor Swift lyric in there somewhere. Dude, of course this album is the album that kind of has mass discontent among the Swifties. Oh my gosh. So I can't count on them just spamming the album for Queen Taylor. Incredibly disappointing. Oh, man. What can you do? I'm kind of doing my part. vaguely. Ophelia, it's not a bad song. It does sound very generic pop, but I don't know, if you have my YouTube channel name, you can probably find my Spotify playlist, you know, where I performatively, once in a while, put in some like Chinese or Russian or French song just to say, you know, there do be a bit, again, just like food, right? People eat the types of food to eat. I mean, unless you're in, you know, I suppose Greenland. And I suppose Greenland, your culinary options are limited, so maybe at that point my logic's a bit faulty. But for the most part, right, people eat food because it tastes good, right? Yeah, it's, well, you know, so if people eat it, you kind of have a decent proof of concepts. And the same goes for music, right? You know, people have to choose to allocate their time to listen to songs X, Y, and Z. So there is some social proof at that point that you can draw upon. I'm not sure if there's a downside to this logic. I suppose if you have a lot of allergies, you know, that okay. But if you have a lot of allergies, you're kind of toast anyway, right? So it's kind of marginal at that point, right? Man, back to my point about, you know, feeling some envy for living in one of those, like, quote unquote luxury apartments, right? I was walking around, you know, a new part of DC, like Brooklyn, to walk to like that monastery, and then past the crappy industrial part to get to Echo Stage. Just, you know, do something different. And so on the way back, right, like on the red line, right, like, because that's where the density is, you see okay, now we need to find our way back, but we are raw dogging this. So, but you can see all of, like, you can see, right, like the windows, you can see the windows, right? You can see like the TV screens and stuff, and it's like, man, it'd be a nice view. Don't need to worry about argon like I do. Nice setup, man. The whinge of envy of thinking about how different life could be. I think I made that comment in the previous video, right? How easily life could be so different. And the implication, of course, how easily life could be much, 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 much better. Yeah. I just was naturally, that is something that's a bit too specific to share any meaningful specifics on, but fit check. Once again, Harry's a bit wild, you know. What can you do? Some charm to that? Probably not, actually. If there was charm to messy hair, I'd probably, yeah, well, some deficiencies you can't make up for. Oh gosh. I do like bum maxing over say like Thanksgiving break. I do like bum maxing, right? Like, yeah, a certain point, right? Like if you work 5 days a week, right? Like that means like literally like you are wearing a dress shirt, some form of dress pants or khakis or whatever, right? So it's, you know, to the degree to which, you know, like the built environment and the literal form factor of what you wear affects things, then, well, literally, the form factor, right? So it's kind of like if you keep on wearing that, like even if you have a 48-hour period away, like you're still fairly plugged into it, right? So I do like bum maxing, where it's like, only wear sweats, only wear shorts, only wear t-shirts, sleep, sleep naked. Like, it's a good life. That is a good vibe. Bum maxing is how I call it. I just suppose you could do one of those things every day. So I just suppose the actual novelty of that one's a bit limited. But what can you do? But yeah, bum maxing is peak. I just was a big point in life is trying to seek the novelty, the little novelties of life. And so bum maxing probably 2 times a year, probably around Christmas, Thanksgiving are the only times you really get to do it. And so bum maxing is how I get to have those kicks. It was a shame probably I only get to do it so little out of the year. But we all must make sacrifices for a contemporary society. I do my part in pioneering financial innovation. And frankly, if you're Taylor Swift, that prediction market is probably a useful benchmark for your own internal forecasts. It is funny, but conceptually, right? Like traditional sports books, like the obvious next step is to lean heavily into getting women to start engaging more. But that is empirically the obvious next step. Just given at this point the low-hanging. It's been 7 years since PAPSA, so all of the low-hanging fruit among guys has kind of been tapped. And you see Kalshi jumping the gun by leaning so heavily into like these Taylor Swift things. And frankly, I do think like a lyric market, will she release an album or something like that? Like there is nuance actually. Those things where like, what is Taylor Swift's track record when it comes to album releases, or will she release a Taylor's version? So like, there's actual nuance to that stuff. And again, right, if you can monetize it, that's pretty dope. Can't really, again, given the volumes, can't really say that people are taking the opportunity. But what can you do? What can you do? As a side note, right, it's a funny thought experiment. If you're in a relationship, right, would it be smart to have a couples podcast? on one hand, like, it's probably quaint and charming and another way to talk to each other. The premise would probably be amusing. The other issue, though, is what if you say something, right? It's kind of like the classic, like, I didn't say that. No, yes, you did say that. Type of thing. So I do suppose the issue is that you can, you could create a tangible record that comes back to bite you. But then again, that probably happens anyway. So at least then you can actually, when it happens, know it's true. little innovations I come up with, that are ultimately futile. But yeah. Part of me wishes I did record my walk yesterday in Brooklyn down the Echo Stage to Union Market. Because, man, some parts of that walk, like, the area was truly, sincerely shitty. Or not great, like, genuinely very beat down industrial. Genuinely very low quality apartment building. Like, it's a true certain type of feel, So, but again, it's very charming. I could get out there in 50 minutes 50 minute subway. Walk around and be back here 10 hours later. Yeah, it would be 10 hours because I got back. I was out from 4:45 or 4:30. Only got back like at 8:30. So it was a 4-hour escapade. So, you've got to use free will when it's easy to. Because if you can't use it when it's easy, will you use it when it's hard? I don't know. Do not. Well, I guess I do know the answer. All of my regrets and complaining kind of shows which way I lean. That's where I tilt. But enough said. Well, today is a Sunday. There you go, guys. It is a Sunday. That is the deep insights I share. So on today's walk, I hope you can. There is some difference between this part of Bethesda. So this would be the eastern part. Well, the walk yesterday was on the western part. So I think, right, so both areas are truly just single family housing, right? No mixed use. But there is a difference on the build, if that makes sense. Like lot size, right? Like this eastern part probably has a bit more density is not the right word, but a bit more density, if that makes sense. Or the lot sizes at least look smaller. Or we certainly don't have the estates that exist as we saw yesterday on it. As an aside, the little passive voice versus active voice dating thing from yesterday, there's a lesson in using passive voice, because she unmatched. There is an issue where you can't really A/B test those things, right? You can't really tell if is it the prompts or is it the pictures that cause the response, right? Like, you literally can't A/B test, you know. So the easy rule of thumb is just, be more attractive. And that's a picture thing, and it does suggest, or the implication is that the pictures are what matters, which I am inclined to believe. We don't need to do a lot of convincing to get me on sides on that. So,
say something 10,000
times. Yeah, doing a live stream, that does tickle my brain. It would be incredibly emasculating in the grand scheme of things. Some would consider it lowbrow, if not slightly offensive. And some things probably should be kept private. But it would be easy content, man. It would be easy content. And is that not what we're after in the grand scheme of things? I tend to think so. Easy, lazy content, best content. Well, I've kind of hit my phone battery limit. But here we are, a nice little loop. Well, until next weekend. Although I'm not sure how many more of these I have, just given the falling temperatures, which does inhibit my enjoyment of it. But we'll see.